Over the winter, we wondered who would play first base for the Twins. Looking like it's Ty France. But what about second base? It's the only starting position that's totally undecided. And what Rocco does there will have ripple effects throughout the entire roster. Let's solve second base today, or not, after we get Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Every day. I'm Dave Brown. Hi, everybody. Hello again, everybody. I did that out of order. That's my second paragraph. And welcome back to Locked On Twins, your daily go-to source for top Minnesota Twins insight, discourse, and analysis. Personally, that's my favorite show of the vast Locked On Podcast Network, which, by the way, brings you your team every day. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe where applicable. I'm Dave Brown, as I might have mentioned, an MLB writer since the summer of Sosa and McGuire. I've been a BBWA member since the summer of whatever happened in 2013, and I've been a Hall of Fame voter since Joe Mauer wasn't quite in Cooperstown yet. Across the Great Plains and cyberspace is Brandon Warren, a Twins writer who was a Twins fan before that, and today is the site expert at Puckett's Pond, a blog about the Twins. You should check out Brandon's written work and mine over at Puckett's Pond to supplement your Locked On Twins coverage. Today's podcast, though, has a mission, 3 missions, actually. 1, to settle who's going to play second base for the Twins. 2, to declare Brock Stewart injury-free forever. 3, to make Manrod the official lazy nickname instead of Erod, for example, of prospect Emmanuel Rodriguez, and to see how he's recuperating from his ankle sprain. That's 3. Before we get to the details, please know that Locked On Twins is brought to you by me and Brandon. Hi, Brandon.
Hi. What's up?
Who will play second? Yeah, you could have just said hi or said whatever. It's all right.
Okay.
Now we're winging it.
Hey.
Who will play second? Betsy Helfand and the Pioneer Press looked at it. Lee talks about competing to make the team, but he's not out to beat a teammate senseless out of a job like some savage. We're all in it together, Brooks Lee says. Edouard Julien is another possibility after Brooks Lee. Julien wants to prove everyone wrong and implies that his spot on the team last year might have been decided before spring training, and that maybe I'm inferring this, but maybe that wasn't the best for him mentally. But it's different this year. He wants to prove everyone wrong because basically, people, we've all kind of given up on him. Unfair as it sounds. The piece, Betsy's piece doesn't really answer the question because I think what it does is says, well, it looks like it's going to be decided in spring training. And I don't disagree with that. I would just point out that trying to decide who should be your starting player in spring training is tricky and dangerous and maybe not the best way to do it. Now, I think the Twins want Brooks Lee to win the job because he's their best prospect at the position. It's not that they don't want Julien to bounce back, but he could be, I'm not sure if they think he's going to bounce back so quickly or what. He could also be, defensively, I don't think he's going to be as good as Lee at second base. And he's vulnerable against left-handed pitching. And hopefully he'll hit again. I don't know. He could be valuable as a DH to them, possibly, from the left-hand side. Castro, I don't think Rocco even is really giving him a chance to play every day at second because that means he can't play all over the outfield and possibly all over the infield. And I want to point out, too, Willi might be the team's best secondary option at shortstop, which is frightening to me. But he might be the best backup for Carlos Correa. So you can't really plan on him playing second base every day. When Carlos Correa doesn't play, someone else has got to play short, and that probably is Willi. So where do you think we are left right now, Brandon, with who's going to play? Who's on second?
Well, you mentioned spring training and making your decisions based on that. And I think of one instance where that happened in 2013, a year where you said what happened that year. Aaron Hicks made that team out of spring training because of how well he performed in spring training, went something like 2 for 36 and got sent down. So yes, I think you're onto something when you say it's risky / dangerous to try to figure out who your players are going to be in spring training. Now there's different aspects. I mean, it can also be, do they look comfortable at second base? Are they hitting the ball hard? but not getting hits to show for it. And we can quantify that a little better now than we used to be able to. But you're right. I don't know if it's kind of like conflating. The team might know who it's going to be, but they're forward facing, they're not going to tell anybody. So we're left to kind of project what we think they're doing. And yeah, if that's the case, I mean, I think they want Lee to win the job, tremendous prospect. The projections are still reasonably high on him as far as production this year. They have him at 1.8 Fangraphs WAR for a projection on Roster Resource, which I think would be quite a nice season from a second baseman. But, I think we're all sleeping on Julien, and maybe for good reason. He didn't do anything against non-fastballs last year. There's no guarantee he can defensively hang at second base. And, beyond that, it just seemed like his discipline was kind of exploited last year. So when I try to kind of put together a short list of who I think is going to get the bulk of the time over there, Castro, for the reasons you mentioned, doesn't make sense to me either. And beyond that, even if he was the semi-regular second baseman, he'd still be moving around. So I think it's Lee atop that list, Julien next man down. And then after that, you could make a better case, I think, for Luke Keeschel than you could Willi Castro, don't you think?
You could make a case for Luke Keeschel. You could, and we'll see how things go. He's not even in Major League camp, right?
No, he got invited. He got an invite.
Peyton Eels did get invited?
No. Keeschel did. Eels, I don't recall. I'll have to look.
No, I don't think he did. I think only one of those guys.
I think you're right.
Which is kind of, I mean, I don't know. Is that telling? I'm just thinking about this now. Is it telling that they didn't invite? I know they didn't invite my guy Carson Cusker, also your guy.
McCusker's last stand.
Right.
Before they cut him, it'll be McCusker's.
I think he's probably. I don't know if it's last stand like for the Twins organization, because I don't see why you couldn't put him back at AAA again. Oh, here I am in AAA again. But
no, I'm just messing with you because it sounds funny.
It is funny. Yes.
It is. Yeah.
Adam Vinatieri, the kicker from the Colts and Patriots, had a relative at Custer's last stand. He was in the band. I always think of that when someone brings up Custer's last stand. So he wasn't really in danger of dying and thus not ever existing for the Patriots. But he was in the band. If things really went south at Custer's last stand and they killed all the band too, then we wouldn't have Adam Vinatieri kicking field goals for Tom Brady. So no
kidding. I mean, that is the is that the butterfly effect where one thing changes and then everything in the future? Oh, I always confuse that.
Moth, everything. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. Yeah.
So I don't know if any of these other guys on the Twins roster had like famous relatives that almost died 200 years ago. But I think Julien to me is a very delicate situation. I don't know this for a fact, but it seems to me guys who fall into slumps like he did, and you mentioned his inability to hit. He's just a fastball guy, right? If it's a breaking pitch, it's not good. That's not good. I mean, that's more than a slump. We've identified something and you're doomed kind of a thing. It still would behoove the Twins to get him going again. I just wonder, based on how last season went and remember how they had to bring him up probably before they wanted to, because they had no other guys. Maybe they should have brought up Eels now that I think about it. But I wonder if Julien could use a half season at AAA to get his confidence back and just try and figure out a way to hit other pitches. I mean, I think, and defensively, it makes sense for them to do that too. I really see that even more than the DH thing is how his early season is going to go. I think, but if Brooks Lee doesn't win the job, and I think he will, but if he doesn't, then what do you do?
I mean, he's probably in St. Paul if he doesn't win the job. It's not to the bench.
Well, what do the Twins do? What if Julien doesn't really get it? And what if Brooks Lee continues to struggle or doesn't show,
That's an interesting point, because you don't want to really force feed either of them big league time at this point, at risk of further jeopardizing development. But I feel like with Julien, you should give him the Matt Wallner, but skip that first slump to start the season. Just have him down at AAA, stash him, let him have plenty of time to get confident again. and then bring him up. And you know how we all saw how Wallner hit like that down the stretch. I think it's Lee, unless there is any reason to believe he is like really, really off. And if he's really, really off and not hurt, I'd be kind of shocked. So honestly, I think it's Lee or bust. And I think regardless of how he performs in the spring, that's kind of the way they've got to go.
I just wonder too if Keishel and Eels might not turn out to be actually better options even for this year. I think it's probably a long shot, but I think there's a non-zero chance that that's true.
Yeah, no, I think that's possible. And how long do you wait to find out?
I don't know. I mean, if Lee doesn't quite get it, but maybe appears on the verge, and if you're starting Julien on the minors, do you go with Lee and hope that he gets it in the first few weeks of the season?
Is it unreasonable to go to Keishel if he just kills it? I mean, he is a pretty...
That's something that could happen. Keishel could, like, that. This is the thing about spring training, too. Now, it could be a good thing. Maybe Keishel killing it in spring training means that it could be... It doesn't mean it's not real, but it's just that spring training does that sometimes.
Well, it probably means he's back from his injury that ended his season, which is very important, right? Like, it may not matter. I would be more worried about, can he be on the field and stay on the field?
All right, so second base, we have not really figured out who should be the second baseman. Like,
hey, if Betsy didn't, neither are we.
That's right. So we're all in the same boat, and it's sinking. But for now, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we have more Twins stuff to talk about. So don't touch that dial or whatever you have.
Wonderful pistachios are a snack that are both delicious and nutritious. Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts you can get. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily recommended value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats that'll help keep you feeling full longer. For instance, I like the ones that come in the shell, so you got to kind of work for it a little bit. I feel like that makes me slow down and not eat too many of them, overindulge. Although if I was going to overindulge on a snack, you could do worse than pistachios. But whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost in the middle of the day, those are my go-to. And again, if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, those are a classic favorite, and the favorite at my house. We keep them on the bedside table. That's how much they are a favorite at our house. Easy for me to say. Get snackin' and get crackin' with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit Wonderful Pistachios to learn more. WonderfulPistachios.com to learn more.
Speaking of tough nuts to crack, Brock Stewart's career. Stewart is, in some ways, the biggest... This is Locked On Twins, by the way. Stewart sometimes is the biggest X factor on the team because, as Rocco says, we're starting with a guy, and he doesn't mean the rotation. He just means when we're talking about Brock Stewart, we're talking about a guy who is capable of being as dominant as any major league reliever. So that's what Rocco thinks of Brock Stewart, and the numbers or the pitch shape or whatever bears all that out. However, lots of injuries, a lot to his shoulder. He did have Tommy John a few years ago. I was looking up. I'm like, has Brock Stewart ever pitched 100 innings in his life or 50 innings or whatever? In the major leagues, no. I think he's topped out about 34. But he does have a history. He had 101 innings in 2015, his first year. His second year, he made the major leagues, getting 149 innings between all his levels in the minors and the Dodgers. But since 2020, he's pitched 95 complete total innings in 5 seasons. Now we've got the pandemic in there, of course. In 2020, Stewart, there was nothing in the majors or minors for him to do, so he played for the Chicago Deep Dish. I'm not even sure what league that is, but I don't know if they're the team that's now named after the hot dogs or what. But
the Chicago Dogs,
the Chicago Dogs. But he played they were called whatever team he was with. It was the Deep Dish, which is funny. And that's kind of how he got he had to go down to indie ball because he wasn't getting anybody out and wasn't staying healthy in the major league system. So that's part of Brock Stewart's career arc. But Betsy, getting back to Betsy, wrote a terrific feature on how he's doing. And the low point that was the middle of last season, where he realized that something was wrong with his shoulder and basically his season was over and he needed surgery. And today, Brock Stewart says, well, right now, where I'm at right now, I'm thrilled. But last year, he was basically crying in the arms of Byron Buxton when he realized at Citi Field after a 15-2 loss that he was toast for the season and maybe his career was over. Who knows? Now, after having surgery on it, the surgeon said, Tim Kremchek, I believe his name is, he calls Stewart's shoulder pristine. Now, Betsy did have a caveat in there about how he's a little behind his other teammates. So I'm like, all right, well, here's the other shoe. He's a little behind the other teammates in terms of preparation, but he's healthy. He is healthy. And if healthy, according to Rocco, he's one of the best relievers in the league. How much are you relying on Brock Stewart this year, Brandon? And what do you think about what he means to the team if he's pitching?
Well, I've been on Brock Stewart for a long time. Back when the Twins were thinking about trading Brian Dozier, that was one of the guys I had in like so many of my suggested trade packages coming back. And so it was kind of funny when that came full circle. But yeah, long and winding road to get there. Would it be unfair, in your opinion, to say if you get the equivalent, whether it's combined or either of these guys, of a full reliever season from him and Justin Topa, that's kind of a reasonable expectation? Because that's where I'm kind of at, is like, I don't know that I can expect one or the other to give me 75 innings or even 60 for that matter. But if they each give me 35, or if one gives me 50 and one gives me 20, and they combine for a reasonable ERA, so they're recreating a pretty good reliever in the aggregate, like, is that an unreasonable expectation? Because that's kind of where I'm at, I think.
It's tough. I mean, Topa, his first impression on the Twins, I'm not saying that like he made a bad impression, but his first impression, it wasn't good because he was hurt almost immediately. And so I don't know. I don't have a good feel for him or his injury situation. It seemed like last year, the injury that he had, at least the first one with his leg, was not his fault. It was freak accident. And that probably somehow contributed to his arm injury, elbow,
I'm sure,
later on. So, not his fault. But then again, when you get into your 30s as a pitcher, as Topa and Stewart are, it's kind of dangerous to have expectations that they're going to get healthier. So it is possible. It's done. It has happened. I don't know. It's the Twins are kind of in a tricky spot here because they have a lot of bullpen depth even without Stewart and Topa coming through. Right. But they could also be in a position, not that I want them to trade Joan Duran, but if they knew they could get your innings total out of Stewart and Topa, they could do something like that and improve some other part of the team with a trade of Duran. But would I do that if I was Falvey? I wouldn't. I don't know. I don't think so. I right now I wouldn't. And of course you could change your mind once you get into the season, but those things can go sideways at any moment. Pitchers are just so it's unnatural what they do.
It's a volatile business. Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm not sure about that, Brandon.
Well, if someone comes to you at the end of spring training with a bigger trade value than you expected, maybe then you reconsider. But no, I agree. I feel like if you could write and again, I haven't talked to Justin Topa, so I can't verify these details, but it'd be like the modern tragedy of the pitcher. Hurts his leg in spring training, hurts his arm later in the year, probably from overcompensating due to the lower body injury. Then you get back from all that and your velo's down. So could you imagine a worse sequence of events for a player just joining a team with a lot to prove? And I mean, just in general, what a terrible trade. What a terrible trade for everyone involved. Gabriel Gonzalez is basically the only one left that we think is going to have any value. So if Topa gives them anything, I think they'll be more than happy to take it. But I also think, he's probably not as much of a front burner reliever as we've kind of thought he was either.
Yeah, well, maybe. I mean, he turned into kind of a front burner reliever with the Mariners. It's just,
Right.
can you expect that to continue? And there's another uh, part of this, like how the roster fits together as far as trades. It doesn't have to be Duran that goes. Maybe
Right.
it's Paddock, because you also have Zebby and you have Festa at the back of the rotation. But Zebby and Festa also, at some point this season, I think are going to get beyond. If they start the season in AAA, they're kind of going to get beyond that how that does them any good anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And they could be useful to the Twins at some point in the bullpen if it's not the rotation. And if you trade Paddock, are you sort of closing yourself off there? So I think maybe we're at the point where we're thinking too much about it, but that's another sort of way of looking at it too, that those guys could be bullpen pieces.
Right.
You might not need to count on Stewart and Topa. You might not need to have Duran, but it's also like, do they dare move any of it?
I do question, though, the Paddock trade market whatsoever when, I think Heyman tweeted it today, but like Kyle Gibson's still a free agent and Spencer Turnbull. I'm not sure how much teams are going to want to trade for.
Right.
I don't know if it's market rate Chris Paddock, but if someone's going to get Kyle Gibson for $1, $2, $3, $5 million, almost 170 innings last year, I don't know that Paddock is going anywhere, just because I don't think he provides enough stability for the value of his contract at this point. So, again, that doesn't really change my mind of how I'm going to handle the back of the bullpen, but I'm kind of resigned to the idea that Chris Paddock will be on this team by hook or by crook.
Yeah, Paddock has not, as I've pointed out, he's not been some measure of full success since he was a rookie.
Yeah.
And that's 6 years ago now. Now, he hasn't been a total loss since then. I mean, one thing or another has happened to make him, kind of less valuable. But your point about all those other pitchers being on the market. Now, I don't know if that's a situation with like Kyle Gibson being out there and Turnbull being out there, and if they're kind of waiting for someone to get hurt and maybe for a need to open up. And,
yeah, they may have offers they're just waiting on. That's true.
That could, yeah. So we don't know how that's going. I've also heard some people surmise that, like, you see, one of the reasons you see all these free agents be free agents so late into the season and into spring training is because teams are kind of realizing that there's 50 guys like them instead of maybe they used to think there's 10 or 20. And it's kind of a byproduct of MLB not expanding and there not being two more teams to fill out these rosters.
Yeah, that part of the marketplace gets compressed.
Yes.
So, and that's where Falvey waits.
Yeah, maybe. But, they're not.
They're not signing one of those guys unless
no. Maybe, yeah. And I think that, I don't know if that would be for starting or what, but
who knows?
He was really good in the relief role.
Really,
Turnbull has thrown a no-hitter.
I just don't know how he's unemployed still. He was tremendous last year.
I wonder if he's waiting for the right thing. But we've talked about how signing these pitchers late in spring training is that's very risky because
that's risky. Besides,
they don't get the full spring training experience, and it seems like they never get going as they would have had they come in early like everyone else.
Well,
so
it's the Carlos Santana conundrum. If you're not early, you're late.
Right. Pepsi. So there's and just to wrap up Brock Stewart, where I'm at now, I'm thrilled, Stewart said. So that's good. He seems like a good dude. The image of him being in Buxton's arms, cradling him and they're crying and hugging and all that. It's just these guys have to be really tough mentally to do this. You talk about Topa coming over and not being able to perform, and it's hard. It's hard to perform the job well, and then when things go sideways, it must be hard to handle it. And I mean this is why they get paid the big bucks. We joke, we use that phrase as a joke, but it's true.
Stewart didn't get this far by not being a warrior and a pretty good dude. Yeah, there's very few guys that can work this hard this long and not have some redemptive qualities. So yeah.
And at some point though, you have to, when do you say enough is enough? But
right.
It would be that would be amazing, mostly more for Brock Stewart if he has a good season. The Twins will be okay, I think. I'm rooting for him to have a good season for him.
Yeah.
In our last segment, Emmanuel Rodriguez rolled his ankle a couple weeks ago. Betsy had a piece about him too. Lots of Betsy today. I think it was Betsy. He said he was really up. What's that?
Should we break first?
Do we have another break?
Yes, I was like, probably should break before we hit that last one.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm still a novice at this whole podcast game.
We're getting you going.
We're
getting you going. It's all good.
We're going.
FanDuel wants you to know that when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get into it than on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Yes, this is the first full night back for the unofficial second half in the NBA. Lots of fun action. And with FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip or you want to get in on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. If you see someone talking about an SGP, that's what it is. Right now, FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. That first $5 bet just has to hit. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
So, last segment, Emmanuel Rodriguez. Saying Emmanuel is kind of like trying to say BBWAA.
Wow.
I got to work on my elocution, my dictation.
It's like the WWE network. They just say WWE network. Or WWE Universe. WWE Universe.
Talking to Betsy with the help of an interpreter, he said he was really upset at first rolling his ankle, but he's trying not to get frustrated because that's part of baseball. So, you can almost hear that in your mind. His thumb is all better. He had a bad thumb last year, which was exacerbated by a questionable head first slide of second base. Emmanuel, don't do that. So I think some of us maybe had the idea that in a certain kind of universe, maybe he would have a chance to compete for a job out of spring training or put himself in position to maybe make the team pretty soon out of it. I don't know if that probably puts the kibosh on that situation. Also, just how the team is structured.
Yeah.
Rodriguez has good, he can hit both sides, but righties and lefties, I believe, but he doesn't really fit in with Wallner and Wright and Larnick, and now they have Bader and all that stuff. So I don't know if there's a place for him immediately in the team. And he's also at the point where maybe the minor leagues will be, superfluous for him and not really, more harm than good at some point. How soon do you think he can be ready to go?
Yeah, he was going to need pretty much a perfect spring training to make the team, and missing any time at all really takes that out of his repertoire. I think he's close enough to ready where if they had a big injury early and knew that they were going to have someone that would get full-time or close to it playing time down the stretch or even anytime in the season, I think he'd be that guy ahead of Kiersey. Kiersey, I think, is more along the lines of the 10-day fill-in, come up, play some defense, run the bases, maybe hit for power, but it's kind of all secondary. So, yeah, with Rodriguez, I still think as long as he gets back and gets into a handful of games, so I at least feel like he's not lingering with something, then I think you're to a point where, yeah, he could be a factor reasonably soon in the season. But with that said, I'm not holding my breath either.
Here's why I really wanted to talk about him, as you know. Not his health or anything, but what should we call him? Now, we don't need to give him a nickname yet because he's still in the minors. But people tend to call players with names such as Emmanuel Rodriguez things like E-Rod. And in fact, E-Rod is, you'll see that in the discourse online. It's kind of a shame what's happened to nicknames over the years. People have complained about it before, like Ted Williams was the splendid splinter and so forth, and then you get to Alex Rodriguez and it's just A-Rod. So that's kind of where it comes from. My issue is there's already been some E-Rods, and maybe they were sort of lesser players, but Eduardo Rodriguez, the pitcher, and There have been other ones too. Maybe I think there've been some with the Twins. Maybe I don't know about that, but it was Frankie Rodriguez. Was he F-Rod? But
I don't think so.
No, but I would like to call Emmanuel Rodriguez Man-Rod.
Call it Man Rod.
That's better. I think that's funnier, and it sort of makes fun of the whole kind of cheesy nickname thing. Man-Rod, MAN-ROD. Can we make Man-Rod happen, Brandon?
I think so. I do.
That's all the effort you're going to put into it?
I'll try. I'll do. Well, I don't think anybody sees my tweets. I think I'm getting throttled. So I'll put it on Blue Sky. I'll put it on the tweets, maybe in some articles too, and we'll see what happens.
Does Elon have it in for you? Is that what you're telling me?
I think he does, honestly, and I don't know why that is.
Well, I think maybe I'm actually team Elon on that. Not Erod. I'm team Man-Rod, as in Manny, as in Manuel, Emmanuel. Right? It's a natural to me. So Man-Rod. Everybody out there, say it with me. Man-Rod. Man-Rod?
Man-Rod.
Man-Rod. Yeah, like an 80s NBC TV show like Manimal. David Hasselhoff stars in Man-Rod. He's part man, all rod. All right, on that note, we're gonna bury this show. And for Brandon Warren, I'm Dave Brown, wishing you all a very pleasant good evening from Twins camp. We're not there, but
you like my helmet, by the way?
Theoretically, yeah. Is that anybody's helmet, or is that just a helmet that you get at the game? Is that ice cream, like a nacho helmet?
It's definitely not ice cream. It'd get you sick, but no, it's an old one, so I don't know what I bought it on Poshmark.
Buy too many things on Poshmark. For Brandon, I'm Dave. Good night. Alexei, can see you tomorrow.
Night.